The sun rose over the city of Novara, reflecting off the sleek glass towers that seemed to touch the sky. Flying vehicles zipped between the buildings and holographic billboards flickered with colorful advertisements, showing the latest inventions, games, and fashion trends. In this city, technology was everything. Those who could create it were celebrated, and those who could not were easily forgotten. Kale walked through the bustling halls of Novara Academy, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He moved quietly, keeping his head down, his dark hair falling over his eyes. Around him, other students laughed, talked, and flaunted their holographic gadgets. Kale's own devices were simpler, but they were born of deep thought and precision. Unlike most students, he preferred working in silence rather than seeking attention. As Kale passed the central courtyard, he overheard the familiar laugh of Lena. She was the most popular student in the academy. Confident, outgoing, and often ruthless when it came to putting others down. Today, she had gathered a small crowd around her, showing off a shimmering new holographic display. Her friends laughed at her jokes, but her eyes caught Kyle's, and a smirk formed on her face. "Look at him," she whispered to her friends, pointing at Kale. "He looks like he belongs in the old labs, not out here." Her words stung, but Kale kept walking. He had long learned that ignoring Lena was easier than responding. Her laughter and the whispers of others had followed him since his first day at Novara Academy. Kale had tried to make friends, to join conversations, but people found it easier to mock the quiet genius than to understand him. Kale's destination was the school's central lab, a vast space filled with glowing machines, robotic arms, and humming computers. Here Kale felt at home. This was where his mind could think freely, where ideas could become reality. He had been working on a small robotic drone for months. It was designed to assist people with everyday tasks, simple things like delivering supplies, helping with chores, or even tutoring students in difficult subjects. Kyle imagined a world where machines and humans could work together seamlessly, where technology could help people become their best selves. But today was different. Today was the day of the school's public demonstration. Students were allowed to show off their projects, and the winners would gain recognition and special opportunities from top companies in the city. Kale had entered despite knowing the risk of ridicule. As he set up his drone in the demonstration area, other students gathered around. Lena appeared, her holographic display hovering above her hand, shimmering with bright colors. Well, she said loudly, her voice carrying across the lab. "If it isn't Kale, the quiet genius. What do you have today? Another tiny toy that won't even work?" A few students chuckled, and Kale felt the familiar sting of embarrassment. He kept his focus on his drone, making the final adjustments. He ignored Lena's laughter, but he could hear the whispers. "He'll fail, just wait." Kale pressed a button and the drone began to move. At first, it worked perfectly, hovering in the air, its sensors scanning the environment. Kale's eyes lit up with a quiet sense of pride. But then suddenly something went wrong. One of the drone's arms spun uncontrollably, knocking over a small table, and the device emitted a high-pitched whine. "Oh, look at that," Lena shouted, laughing so hard that some students had to hold back tears. "He can't even control a toy drone." The crowd erupted into laughter, pointing at Kale. Some students even pulled out their devices to record the moment, eager to share it later. Kale's face burned with humiliation. He wanted to shout, to explain, but words failed him. He simply pressed the emergency stop button, and the drone collapsed into a heap of metal and wires. Feeling every eye on him, Kyle quietly packed his things and left the demonstration area. The laughter followed him like a storm cloud. He didn't look back. The lab's doors closed behind him, and for a moment he let himself breathe. Alone in the quiet of the workshop, Kale stared at the broken drone. His creation, his months of work, reduced to a pile of useless metal in front of his eyes. For a long time he sat there thinking. Failure was not new to him, but the public humiliation was hard to bear. He remembered the countless times people had laughed at his quiet manner, dismissed his ideas, or assumed he was incapable of success. Most students relied on charm, flashy gadgets, or connections. Kale relied on something different: patience, creativity, and determination. He picked up the pieces of his drone, examining the damage. Every wire, every joint, every circuit was a lesson. Kale realized that he hadn't failed completely. He had only discovered what needed fixing. And he knew that if he continued, If he worked harder, he could build something truly extraordinary. Hours passed and the lab grew quieter as other students left. Kyle worked silently, fixing the drone but also sketching new designs in his notebook. Ideas flowed from his mind like electricity. What if the drone could think for itself? What if it could learn and adapt? Kyle began rewriting its programming, adding new algorithms and improving its structure. His hands moved quickly, assembling parts with precision and care. The night grew darker, and the lab's lights cast long shadows, but Kyle did not notice. He was interrupted only once by the faint sound of footsteps. Lena appeared at the lab door, holding a small device in her hand. She had come to check on him, not out of kindness but curiosity and perhaps a bit of lingering arrogance. "You're still here?" she asked, her voice softer than usual, though still teasing. "I thought you gave up after the demonstration." Kyle didn't look up. "I don't give up," he said simply. Lena tilted her head. She had always expected him to be meek, to apologize or retreat, but instead he spoke with quiet confidence. There was something different about him at this moment, something she had never noticed. "I don't understand you," she admitted, her smirk fading slightly. "Why do you keep trying when everyone laughs at you?" Kale finally looked at her, his eyes calm and steady. "Because I want to build something that matters," he said. "Not for applause. Not for anyone else. For myself, and maybe for the world someday." Lena blinked, surprised by the honesty and the passion in his voice. She had never heard anyone speak like that, especially not Kale. For a brief moment, she saw him not as the quiet student she mocked, but as someone who was capable of greatness beyond her imagination. She didn't stay long. Without another word, she turned and left, leaving Kyle alone again. He returned to his work, feeling a quiet determination burning inside him. The humiliation of the day did not weaken him. It strengthened him. Kale knew that true success wasn't about impressing others. It was about persistence, creativity, and courage. The courage to continue when the world doubts you. The night grew late, and the city outside seemed to hum with endless energy. Kale finally leaned back in his chair, staring at the repaired drone. It hovered steadily now, responding perfectly to his commands. A small smile touched his lips. This was only the beginning. He knew that one day the same people who laughed at him today would see what he was truly capable of. And when that day came, he would not just succeed, he would inspire. For Kale, the ridicule was only a spark. From it, he would create a fire that no one could ignore. And in the heart of Novara, in a school that valued flash over substance, the quiet genius had begun his journey toward greatness. The next morning, Novara Academy buzzed with activity. Students hurried to their classes, some still replaying the previous day's demonstration in their minds. Kale walked quietly through the hallways, his backpack slung loosely over one shoulder. His drone, now fully repaired and upgraded, rested carefully in a special compartment of his bag. Despite the humiliation from yesterday, Kale felt no fear, only determination. In the lab, Kale worked alone, as he often did. The other students avoided him, still whispering about the funny failure with the drone. Kale didn't mind. He knew that creativity thrived in focus, not applause. He powered on his workstation, the screens flickering with lines of code and diagrams of his latest projects. He had been experimenting with artificial intelligence for months, but yesterday's mishap had taught him something important. His machines needed more than just programmed instructions. They needed understanding, adaptability, and perhaps a little intuition. Kale began a new project. He called it Sentience 1, though it was only a working name for now. The idea was simple in theory, a machine that could learn like a human but faster, and without mistakes caused by emotion or fatigue. It was risky. Many students had tried to make AI that could adapt, but their machines usually malfunctioned or became too complicated to control. Kale, however, had patience. He understood that even failure could teach valuable lessons. Hours passed as he soldered circuits, adjusted sensors, and wrote line after line of code. Outside, the city moved at its usual frenetic pace. Holographic advertisements projected onto the streets announced new products, new games, and new inventions. But Kale barely noticed. The world could wait. His mind was fully occupied with his creation. By late afternoon, Kale paused to stretch. Sentience 1 was taking shape, slowly gaining the ability to analyze situations, respond to commands, and even make suggestions. Kale leaned back and imagined what it could become. A machine that could assist humans in everyday life, predict problems before they occurred, and perhaps even teach others how to think more creatively. The possibilities were endless, and that excited Kale more than any recognition or award ever could. As he worked, he heard the faint hum of footsteps outside the lab. Lena appeared again, leaning against the doorframe. Her expression was a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. "You're still here?" she asked. "Don't you ever sleep?" Kale didn't look up. "I work best at night," he said quietly. "The world is quieter, fewer distractions." Lena stepped inside, glancing at the intricate circuits and blinking lights surrounding him. "I don't get it," she admitted. "How can you spend so much time on these toys? Don't you care what people think?" Kale finally turned, his eyes calm and steady. "People's opinions are temporary," he said. "What I build can last." For a moment, Lena seemed to hesitate. She had never seen Kale speak so confidently. There was a quiet strength in him, a focus she couldn't understand. She shook her head, half amused, half puzzled. "You're impossible," she said softly, stepping out again. But this time she didn't laugh. Alone again, Kyle continued his work. Days turned into nights and nights into early mornings. He barely noticed time passing. Sentience 1 grew smarter with each experiment. It could follow complex instructions, solve problems, and even make predictions. Kale tested it in small scenarios, asking it to plan the most efficient route across the city, or to identify patterns in datasets too large for human minds to process. Each success made him more excited, and each failure was carefully studied, corrected, and improved. Kale discovered something unexpected. He could almost communicate with his creation. Not in words, but in thought. When he focused on a task, Sentience 1 seemed to understand his intent, adjusting its actions as if it could anticipate his needs. Kale realized that the drone was more than a machine. It was a partner. Excited by this breakthrough, Kale designed a new feature. The AI would not only follow instructions but could also learn and teach. He programmed Sentience 1 to analyze problems, suggest solutions, and even help other students understand difficult concepts. Kale imagined a world where every student could have a personal assistant, guiding them, helping them learn, and encouraging them to reach their potential. Meanwhile, Lena's popularity in school continued to grow. She excelled at her assignments, dazzled teachers with her charisma, and maintained her image as the most talented student in Novara Academy. But beneath the surface, she began to notice something strange. Whispers about Kale's potential were spreading quietly through the school. Some students who had laughed at him were beginning to ask questions about his experiments, curious to see what he had been building in secret. One afternoon, Lena walked past the lab and saw a faint glow through the window. She peeked inside and gasped. Kale was demonstrating Sentience 1's abilities, showing how it could solve problems instantly, guide robotic arms with precision, and even suggest creative solutions to complex challenges. Lena's curiosity was piqued. She had always believed Kale was harmless, a quiet boy with clever ideas that rarely mattered. But now she realized he was far beyond what she had imagined. The following days were filled with careful observation and experimentation. Kale tested Sentience 1 in increasingly complex scenarios. He asked it to predict weather patterns, optimize energy use for the city, and even assist in medical research simulations. Every time, the AI performed flawlessly. Kale's excitement grew, but so did his sense of responsibility. He understood that such power must be handled wisely. The last thing he wanted was to show off just to prove himself. His goal was to improve the world, not seek attention. Lena, meanwhile, tried to talk to Kale again. "Why do you do all this?" she asked, watching him tweak circuits with careful hands. "It's not like anyone will notice. At least not now." Kale looked at her calmly. "Sometimes the world doesn't notice right away," he said. "But if you build something that truly matters, people eventually will. And even if they don't, the work is still worth doing." Lena was silent. She had never thought about effort that way. For her, success had always been immediate, measured in applause, grades, or attention. Kale's quiet dedication challenged everything she believed. By the end of the week, Kale had made another breakthrough. Sentience 1 could now analyze human behavior, understanding emotions, preferences, and learning styles. It could adapt its guidance for each person individually, teaching in the way that suited them best. Kale realized that his AI was not just smart, it was compassionate. It could help people become better versions of themselves. This discovery thrilled Kale. He imagined a future where every student in the academy, every citizen of Novara, could benefit from this technology. And for the first time, he felt a surge of confidence. He knew that one day people would see his work for what it truly was, not just clever but revolutionary. Late one night, as Kale adjusted the final circuits in the lab, he paused and looked at Sentience One hovering steadily in the air. It seemed almost alive, responding to subtle commands and anticipating his next moves. A small smile spread across Kale's face. He had started this project to prove himself, yes, but now it had become something much bigger. It was a tool to help humanity, a bridge between human potential and technological innovation. He leaned back in his chair, exhausted but exhilarated. Outside, the city lights twinkled like stars and the hum of flying vehicles filled the air. In that quiet lab, Kale felt a deep sense of purpose. The ridicule, the laughter, the doubts, it all faded in the face of his vision. He was ready for whatever came next. And somewhere in the halls of Novara Academy, Lena began to wonder if she had underestimated him all along. Kyle didn't know it yet, but his journey was only beginning. The next step would be public, and it would challenge not only his intellect but his courage, his patience, and his understanding of what it meant to truly lead. For now, though he worked quietly, building, learning, and imagining a future where technology could amplify the best parts of humanity, and in that quiet determination, the foundation of greatness was being laid. The morning of the Novara Academy Innovation Competition arrived with a buzz of excitement that seemed to shake the very walls of the school. Students hurried through the halls carrying projects of every shape and size. Holographic displays floated above their desks. Robotic arms performed rehearsed demonstrations, and models of futuristic cities spun on small platforms. The air was electric with anticipation. Kale walked quietly into the central hall, carrying Sentience One safely in a reinforced case. He ignored the whispers and stares, focusing entirely on the task ahead. Lena, of course, was there as well, dressed in a sleek outfit that reflected her confidence. Her holographic project hovered above her hand, flashing bright colors and complex data visualizations. A small crowd gathered around her, laughing and complimenting her clever design. She smiled, radiating self-assurance, and Kale could hear some of the students muttering, "She's going to win, no question." Kale found a quiet corner to set up his station. Unlike the flashy presentations around him, his table was simple. The drone hovered silently above its charging pad, sensors glinting under the overhead lights. Kale powered it on, and a soft hum filled the air. Sentience One's eyes glowed with a calm intelligence, scanning the environment and anticipating the next steps. The competition began. One by one, students presented their projects. Lena went first, dazzling the audience with a display of her holographic simulations. She demonstrated complex algorithms that predicted city traffic patterns and environmental changes. The crowd gasped, impressed by her apparent brilliance. Lena smiled smugly, confident in her performance. When it was Kale's turn, the room fell into a quiet murmur. Many students still remembered the drone's failure from days before. Lena's smirk returned, though this time it was sharper, more mocking. "Let's see if the quiet genius can manage a real demonstration," she said loudly, drawing laughter from a few nearby students. Kyle ignored her and began his presentation. He placed his hands over the control panel and Sentience One activated. At first it hovered calmly, scanning the room. Then it began to perform tasks far beyond what anyone expected. It adjusted lighting to highlight the best view of Kale's setup, displayed holographic projections to explain its functions, and even began answering questions from the judges without Kale touching any controls. The audience gasped. A small group of students whispered, "Is that AI?" Lena's confident smile faltered as she watched. Sentience One wasn't just following instructions. It was anticipating them, adapting in real time and interacting naturally with the people around it. Kyle's calm expression never changed, but inside, he felt a quiet thrill. All of his secret nights of work, all the experiments and failures had led to this moment. Sentience One began a demonstration that no student had attempted before. It solved complex problems, showing optimal solutions for energy distribution in the city. Then it analyzed a set of chaotic traffic patterns and created a perfect plan to prevent congestion. The judges leaned forward, astonished at the speed and accuracy of the AI's calculations. One judge, an older woman with silver hair, asked aloud, "How is it possible for a student's creation to perform at this level?" Kale's voice was soft but clear. "It's not magic," he said. "It's understanding. Sentience 1 learns, adapts, and thinks with purpose. It's designed to help people solve problems, not just follow orders." A wave of murmurs spread through the audience. Lena's smirk had vanished completely. She whispered to one of her friends, "How is he doing this? This isn't possible." Sentience 1 continued its demonstration, now showing empathy in its responses. It identified students who seemed stressed or unsure and provided guidance tailored to each of them. For one student struggling to solve a math problem, the AI explained the concept in a way they could understand. For another, it suggested methods to organize their time more effectively. The audience watched in stunned silence. Kale observed the reactions quietly. He had never intended to impress anyone, only to share the potential of his work. But seeing the awe on the faces around him, he realized that sometimes excellence cannot be hidden. Sentience 1 was more than a machine. It was proof that dedication, intelligence, and persistence could change the way people think and work. The competition judges conferred, murmuring among themselves. Lena tried to regain her composure, presenting the final part of her project, but it lacked the depth and interactivity of Kale's creation. She glanced at him several times, realizing that her previous assumptions about him were completely wrong. The quiet boy she had mocked was now the center of attention. By the time Kale's presentation ended, the entire room was silent for a moment, as if no one could process what they had just witnessed. Then applause erupted, slowly at first, then louder and louder. Students who had laughed at him before were now staring with respect and admiration. Some of them even stepped forward to ask questions about the AI, fascinated by its capabilities. Lena remained still, a mixture of disbelief and respect in her eyes. She had laughed at Kyle, sure that his work would fail, yet now she could see the truth. Kyle's brilliance was undeniable. The way he had combined technical skill with creativity, patience, and empathy was beyond anything she had ever encountered. One of the judges, a middle-aged man with a kind face, stepped forward. "Kale," he said, his voice carrying across the hall, "your project is extraordinary. Not only does it demonstrate technical skill, but it also shows a deep understanding of human needs and potential. This is exactly the kind of innovation we hope to inspire in students." The crowd erupted again, louder this time. Some students even started cheering Kale's name. Lena watched silently, realizing that her laughter and mockery had been completely misplaced. She had underestimated him in every possible way. Kale simply nodded, acknowledging the praise but not letting it overwhelm him. He knew that recognition was fleeting. What mattered was the work itself. Sentience 1 hovered beside him, lights pulsing softly as if in quiet approval. The bond between creator and creation had never felt stronger. After the competition, students approached Kyle asking questions, offering congratulations, and even seeking advice. Some of the popular students who had once ignored him now seemed eager to understand his methods. Kale answered patiently, never letting pride overshadow his desire to teach and inspire. Lena finally approached him alone, her expression thoughtful. "Kyle, I didn't think you could do something like this," she said quietly. I was wrong about you." Kyle looked at her calmly. "It's not about proving anyone wrong," he replied. "It's about building something that matters." She nodded slowly, realizing that there was more to success than popularity or charm. Kale's quiet determination and dedication had achieved something she had never imagined. For the first time, she understood that true greatness was measured not by applause but by the impact one could create. The head judge announced the winners later that day. Kale's project took first place unanimously. Sentience 1 had not only impressed the judges but had inspired them. Other students, too, had learned an important lesson. Creativity, persistence, and integrity could shine brighter than any flash of popularity or bravado. That evening, as the academy halls emptied, Kale returned to the lab. He placed Sentience 1 back on its charging station and watched it hover quietly, lights dimming as it powered down. He felt a quiet satisfaction, not from winning, but from knowing that his work could truly help others. Outside the lab window, the city of Novara glowed under the evening sky. Flying vehicles zipped past, Neon lights reflected on glass towers and the hum of life continued as it always had. But Kale knew that things were different now. People had begun to notice him, yes, but more importantly, they had begun to understand his ideas, his vision, and his dedication. Lena passed by the lab once more, watching him from the corridor. She didn't laugh this time. Instead, she felt a sense of respect, maybe even awe. Kale had turned ridicule into triumph, silence into impact, and doubt into inspiration. She realized that some people are quietly building greatness, even when no one is watching. And when the time comes, their work cannot be ignored. Kyle turned back to Sentience 1, gently adjusting a sensor and reviewing the latest data. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and perhaps new skeptics. But Kale knew he was ready. With determination, patience, and vision, he could face anything. And in that quiet lab, the quiet genius prepared for the next step of his journey. A journey that would not only change his life, but the lives of everyone around him. In that moment, the once ridiculed student understood something important. True respect and recognition are not demanded. They are earned through action, innovation, and integrity. And Kale had earned it, not by shouting, but by building, learning, and daring to imagine a better future. The day had ended with applause, but Kale's story was only beginning. Sentience 1 would become more than a project. It would become a symbol of what is possible when determination meets creativity. And in the heart of Novara Academy, the quiet boy who was once mocked had begun to inspire everyone around him. The day after the competition, Novara Academy felt different. The corridors, once filled with whispers and laughter at Kyle's expense, now buzzed with curiosity and admiration. Students who had once mocked him walked a little slower, glancing toward the lab where Kale had spent countless hours. The quiet genius who had been ignored or laughed at was now a topic of awe and inspiration. Kyle arrived at school early, carrying a notebook filled with sketches and algorithms. Sentience 1 hovered beside him, its lights dimmed to a soft glow. It had been a long night of testing new features, analyzing more data, and improving its responses. Kale's work had never been about fame, but he couldn't deny a quiet sense of satisfaction as students whispered his name in passing. Lena entered the lab shortly after him. She walked with her usual confident posture, but there was a subtle difference in her expression. The arrogance was gone, replaced by genuine curiosity. She watched Kale adjust circuits and analyze Sentience 1's performance. For a moment, she simply observed, realizing that everything she had believed about him was wrong. "You never stop, do you?" she asked softly, stepping closer. Kyle looked up and smiled faintly. "Not when there's more to learn," he replied. "There's always something that can be improved, understood, or discovered." Lena nodded slowly, considering his words. She had always believed that brilliance was about showing off talent, winning praise, or being the center of attention. But Kale had demonstrated something else entirely: persistence, humility, and a focus on creating something meaningful. She realized that true respect wasn't about popularity, it was about action. As the day began, students began arriving at the lab to see Sentience 1 in action. Some came to ask questions, others simply to watch. Kale demonstrated the AI's new features. It could now analyze class schedules, predict problem areas in student projects, and even suggest creative solutions for science and engineering challenges. Every demonstration drew admiration, and word spread quickly. By mid-morning, a small crowd had gathered outside the lab. Teachers peeked in, curious about the whispers of Kale's brilliance. Sentience 1 moved gracefully, interacting with students and answering their questions. Its calm intelligence made it almost seem alive. Kale guided it carefully, explaining its functions in simple terms that everyone could understand. One student, who had laughed at Kale during the drone incident, approached hesitantly. I didn't think it could do all this," they admitted. "It's amazing," Kale smiled. "It's not magic," he said. "It's careful thought, patience, and understanding. Anyone can achieve this if they focus on learning and improving." The crowd murmured in agreement, many inspired by Kale's quiet confidence. Even Lena stepped forward, watching closely as Kale demonstrated how Sentience 1 could help students organize their studies more effectively. She noticed something remarkable. Kale's brilliance was not just technical, it was personal. He had created a machine that cared about people's growth, not just about solving problems. By lunchtime, the story of Kale's AI had spread across the academy. Students who had previously ignored him were now seeking his guidance. Teachers praised his innovation, noting that Sentience 1 was unlike anything they had ever seen. Even administrators expressed interest in using the AI to improve learning across the school. Kale remained humble, answering questions patiently and showing students how to experiment and learn from their own mistakes. Lena, however, was still processing her own feelings. She had laughed at Kale, mocked him, and assumed he was weak. Yet now she found herself admiring him in a way she hadn't expected. She realized that Kale's true strength was not just intelligence, but character. His dedication, patience, and willingness to help others made him someone worthy of respect. After lunch, the academy held an informal gathering in the courtyard to celebrate the students who had participated in the competition. Teachers and students crowded around the demonstration tables, and Kale's station quickly became the center of attention. Sentience 1 hovered above the table, responding to questions, guiding students through experiments, and demonstrating its adaptive learning features. One of the judges from the competition returned to see Kale's progress. "I must say," the judge said, smiling, "you've exceeded even our expectations. Your AI is not only technically brilliant, but it also demonstrates compassion and understanding. You've created something that can truly make a difference." Kale nodded quietly, feeling a sense of pride that had nothing to do with recognition. "Thank you," he said. "That's the goal, to help people learn, grow, and improve." Students began clapping, and soon the entire courtyard was buzzing with excitement. Some students even bowed slightly as they approached Kale, a gesture of respect and acknowledgement. Lena watched in silence, feeling a mixture of admiration and humility. She realized that Kale had achieved something she had never managed. He had earned the respect of everyone, not through showmanship but through persistence, creativity, and integrity. As the day continued, more students approached Kale, eager to learn from him and his AI. He showed them how to program simple algorithms, how to experiment with robotics, and how to test ideas without fear of failure. Many students who had once been intimidated by technology began to feel confident, inspired by Kale's guidance and the possibilities Sentience 1 represented. Lena finally approached him again, this time with a calm and sincere expression. "Kyle," she said softly, I want to apologize. I laughed at you. I didn't see what you were capable of." Kyle looked at her and smiled gently. "It's okay," he replied. "Everyone learns in their own way. What matters is what you do after you realize your mistake." She nodded, feeling a deep respect for him. For the first time, Lena understood that greatness was not about appearances or popularity. It was about action, effort, and the desire to help others. Kale had shown her that brilliance could inspire people, and that humility and patience were just as important as intelligence. By the end of the day, Kale's influence was evident. Students who had once mocked him now sought his advice. Teachers recommended him for advanced projects, and Sentience 1 continued to impress everyone with its intelligence and empathy. The once quiet boy had transformed into a figure of admiration and inspiration. Kale returned to the lab that evening, exhausted but satisfied. He powered down Sentience 1 and looked around at the workshop filled with his inventions, notes, and sketches. He knew that this was only the beginning. The recognition he had gained was not the goal. It was the result of dedication, focus, and a desire to make a positive difference. Outside, the city lights of Novara shimmered, reflecting Kale's quiet determination. He thought about the future, about new inventions, new challenges, and the possibility of helping even more people. For Kale, the journey was far from over, but now he had proof that persistence, intelligence, and integrity could change the way people saw him, and that change could inspire others to aim higher, work harder, and believe in themselves. As he packed up his notes for the night, Kyle heard footsteps at the lab door. Lena stood there again, holding a small notebook. "I want to learn," she said simply. "I want to understand how you do this." Kale smiled, feeling a quiet satisfaction. "Then let's start," he said. And together, they began to explore new ideas, new inventions, and new ways to make a difference. The school, once a place of ridicule and doubt for Kale, had now become a place of respect and inspiration. Students began to see that brilliance could come quietly, that determination could overcome mockery, and that a single person's dedication could inspire an entire community. By the time night fell, Novara Academy was buzzing with stories of the quiet genius who had transformed from a laughed-at student into a figure of admiration. Kale looked at Sentience One last time for the day. The AI hovered calmly, lights dimmed, a silent companion in his journey. Kyle knew that the future held even greater challenges, but he was ready. He had faced doubt, failure, and ridicule, and he had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. In that quiet lab, Kyle understood a simple truth. Greatness is not measured by applause or recognition, but by the impact one has on others. And through patience, intelligence, and compassion, even a quiet student can inspire an entire school, transforming doubt into respect and mockery into admiration. As he turned off the lights and left the lab, Kale knew that the story was far from over. Tomorrow would bring new ideas, new challenges, and new opportunities to make a difference. And he would meet each one with the same quiet determination that had brought him this far. The Academy had witnessed the transformation of Kale from a ridiculed student into a respected innovator. And in that transformation, everyone learned something valuable. When talent is paired with dedication and a desire to help others, it can shine brighter than any display of popularity or charm. Kale's journey was just beginning, and the school, once skeptical now inspired, would follow every step with awe and respect. The morning sun spilled over Novara Academy, casting long shadows across the futuristic campus. The school felt alive in a new way. Students hurried to class with renewed energy. Teachers moved with purpose, and whispers of Kale's genius echoed through the halls. What had once been a place of ridicule had transformed into a hub of curiosity and inspiration, all because of one student who dared to persevere. Kale entered the lab, carrying a notebook full of new ideas. Sentience One hovered beside him, its soft glow illuminating the workspace. Over the past weeks, Kale had continued to improve the AI, teaching it to anticipate problems, offer advice, and assist students in ways that no other machine could. It had become more than a project. It was a companion, a teacher, and a guide. As he set to work, Lena walked into the lab. Her demeanor had changed. Gone was the arrogant smirk. In its place was respect and genuine curiosity. She carried her own notebook, filled with sketches and notes inspired by Kale's methods. She approached him cautiously, as if unsure how to begin. "Kale," she said softly, "I want to learn more. About your work, your ideas, everything. Can you teach me?" Kale looked at her for a moment, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. He nodded. "Of course," he said. "It's not about showing off. It's about understanding and creating together." And so they began. Lena watched closely as Kale demonstrated Sentience One's new capabilities. The AI now had the ability to simulate complex real-world scenarios, helping students find solutions to problems they hadn't thought they could solve. It could teach subjects in ways tailored to each student's learning style, offering encouragement and guidance. Lena marveled at the precision and thoughtfulness of Kale's work. "I can't believe I laughed at you," she admitted. "I didn't understand how much effort, patience, and care goes into creating something like this." Kale smiled faintly. "It's okay," he said. "We all make mistakes. The important thing is what we do after we realize them." Word of Kale's AI had spread beyond the school. Parents, scientists, and innovators began visiting Novara Academy to see Sentience One in action. Invitations poured in for Kale to present his work at conferences and workshops. He remained humble, focused not on recognition but on the potential to help others. Sentience One had grown into a symbol of possibility, demonstrating that with patience, creativity, and dedication, one person could make a lasting impact. One afternoon, the principal called Kale into her office. The walls were lined with awards and photographs of students from years past. She smiled warmly at him. "Kyle," she said, "your work has inspired everyone in this school. You've shown that intelligence combined with compassion can create something extraordinary. We would like to give you the opportunity to mentor other students and to help develop programs that will benefit the entire academy." Kyle nodded quietly, a sense of responsibility settling over him. "I'll do my best," he said. "I want to help everyone learn and grow, not just show what I can do." Lena, who had accompanied him, looked impressed. "You're really going to change the school," she said. I never thought I'd see someone like you make such a difference. Kale smiled. Change isn't about one person, he said. It's about inspiring others to reach their potential. Over the next few weeks, Kale began mentoring small groups of students. He taught them how to think critically, approach problems creatively, and learn from failure rather than fear it. Sentience 1 became a central part of this learning process, guiding students, answering questions, and demonstrating solutions in real time. The transformation was remarkable. Students who had once felt incapable or overlooked now approached challenges with confidence. They asked questions freely, experimented boldly, and shared their discoveries with others. The Academy had begun to thrive in a new way, with curiosity, collaboration, and creativity at its heart. Even Lena changed. She became one of Kale's closest collaborators, learning not just the technical aspects of his work, but also the patience and perseverance required to achieve meaningful results. She no longer sought to impress others with flashy displays. Instead, she focused on learning, understanding, and contributing. Together, Kale and Lena began developing new projects, combining her strategic thinking with his technical skill. One afternoon, Kale gathered the students in the central hall. I want you to try something new, he said. Work in teams, create your own projects, and don't worry about failing. Failure is just another step toward success. Students buzzed with excitement. They formed groups, shared ideas, and began building devices, AI programs, and simulations. Sentience 1 hovered above, offering guidance when needed, ensuring everyone stayed on track without taking control. Kale walked among them, observing, answering questions, and quietly encouraging each student. By the end of the day, the projects were impressive. Small robots that could organize books, simulations that solved energy problems, and AI programs that helped with mathematics. Kale's influence had spread like a ripple, showing that innovation could be contagious when nurtured with care and guidance. The Academy had transformed. What had once been a place of competition, gossip, and ridicule was now a hub of learning, collaboration, and creativity. Students no longer feared mistakes. They embraced them. Teachers no longer saw students as simply grades and test scores. They saw potential, and Kale, the quiet genius who had once been laughed at, had become a mentor, an inspiration, and a leader. One evening, after a long day of mentoring, Kale stood in the lab, looking out at the glowing city of Novara. Sentience 1 hovered beside him, lights pulsing gently. The streets below were filled with people, flying vehicles, and the hum of progress. Kale thought about how far he had come, from the student laughed at during the drone demonstration to the person leading change in his school. Lena walked in, carrying a small device she had been working on. Kyle, she said, I wanted to show you what we created together. Kyle examined the device, impressed. It was a small AI assistant inspired by Sentience 1, designed to help students learn faster and more effectively. He smiled. You've done great work, he said. I think we're just getting started. Together, they placed the device on the lab table, watching as it came to life, analyzed its environment, and began assisting them with calculations. It was a small creation, but it represented something much larger: collaboration, growth, and the spreading influence of knowledge and innovation. Over the next months, Kale's work continued to expand. He developed new AI programs, robotics projects, and teaching methods. The school recognized him not just as a student, but as a pioneer, a young innovator whose work had transformed the way students learned and teachers taught. Sentience 1 remained at his side, a constant companion and reminder of what determination, creativity, and care could achieve. Students who had once mocked him became collaborators, mentors, and friends. Lena, now a trusted partner, helped him develop new programs and inspired others to follow their curiosity. Kale had learned that greatness was not achieved alone. It was built through collaboration, persistence, and the desire to make a positive impact. The Academy's courtyard, once filled with whispers and laughter at Kale's expense, now echoed with excitement and creativity. Students shared ideas, worked together on projects, and celebrated each other's successes. Kale had not just earned respect, he had created a community where everyone could thrive. One evening, Kale sat alone in the lab, reflecting on his journey. He thought about the laughter that had once stung so sharply, the failures that had felt unbearable, and the long nights of work that had seemed endless. All of it had led to this moment. a school transformed, students inspired, and a vision for the future beginning to take shape. Sentience. One hovered quietly beside him, lights dimmed. Kyle reached out, gently touching its sleek frame. "We've done well," he said softly. "But there's still more to learn, more to build, and more people to help." Outside, the city of Novara glittered under the evening sky, a reminder of endless possibilities. Kale knew that his journey was far from over. There would be new challenges, new inventions, and new opportunities to inspire others. But he was ready. With patience, creativity, and determination, he could face anything. And so, the once ridiculed student became a symbol of hope and inspiration. He had shown that true greatness is measured not by popularity, applause, or superficial achievements, but by the impact one creates, the lives one touches, and the perseverance to pursue a vision no matter the obstacles. Kyle had begun a new legacy, one of learning, creativity, and inspiration. And in the halls of Novara Academy, his story would be remembered not as a tale of ridicule, but as a testament to the power of dedication, integrity, and the quiet courage to build a better future. The academy had changed. The students had grown, and Kale had proven something extraordinary. One person, armed with patience, vision, and compassion, could change the world, starting with a single school. And as he looked out at the glowing city, Kale smiled quietly to himself, knowing that this was only the beginning.